Europe was burning. World War II had turned green land into broken land. Near a dark forest and low hills, there was a small village. The houses were old. The roads were narrow. Smoke often stayed in the air. German soldiers walked through the village every day. They moved freely. They laughed loudly. They felt powerful. To them, this village was already defeated. At the edge of the village lived a farmer. He was quiet. Very quiet. His clothes were old and torn. His boots were worn out. His hands were rough from years of hard work. He carried simple tools, an axe, a rope, and sometimes old metal scraps. He did not talk much. He did not look strong. He did not look dangerous. The German soldiers noticed him. They laughed. One soldier pointed at him and said something in German. Others laughed harder. Another soldier threw a small stone near his feet. The farmer stopped for a moment, then continued walking. He did not look at them. He did not answer. To the soldiers he was nothing. Just a poor farmer. Just another weak man in a broken land. But the village people knew better. They watched the farmer with quiet eyes. They knew he had lived on this land his whole life. He knew every tree, every hill, every narrow path. He knew where the ground was soft and where it was hard. He knew how fog moved in the forest. He knew how sound traveled at night. Still no one spoke. Fear had taken their voices. The Germans had burned farms before. They had taken food. They had killed people who asked questions. The village learned to stay silent. Survival meant obedience. The farmer worked during the day like always. He fixed broken fences. He carried wood. He fed his animals. But his eyes were always moving. Always watching. He watched how the soldiers walked. He watched how fast they moved. He watched where they smoked, where they rested, where they laughed. Most of all, he watched the forest. The forest was old. Thick trees stood close together. The ground went up and down without warning. Paths twisted like snakes. During the day, sunlight barely touched the soil. At night, the forest became something else, dark, cold, and confusing. The German soldiers liked to walk near it. They felt safe. They believed no one would dare fight them. The farmer knew better. That evening, the soldiers drank and sang near their trucks. Their voices echoed between the hills. The village doors were closed. Windows were dark. The farmer returned to his small wooden house. Inside it was almost empty. A table. A chair. A small bed. On the wall hung old tools from his father's time. He sat down slowly and removed his boots. His face showed no anger. No fear. Only thought. Later, when the village was asleep, he stood up again. He moved quietly. Outside the night was cold. The moon was thin. Fog began to crawl from the forest like a living thing. The farmer pulled a small sack over his shoulder and walked toward the edge of the village. No one followed him. Near an old broken fence he stopped. He knelt down and lifted loose boards. Under them were hidden metal wires. Old wires. Rusted wires. Some came from broken farm tools. Some from destroyed machines left by war. Slowly, carefully he collected them. His hands moved with skill. Not fast. Not slow. Perfect. He tested each wire. He pulled it tight. He checked its strength. Weak wires were thrown away. Strong ones were rolled and placed in the sack. Then he walked into the forest. The trees welcomed him like an old friend. His feet made no sound. He did not use a lamp. He did not need one. He knew where every root was. He knew where to step. He stopped at a narrow path. German boots had made this path. It was straight. Easy. Perfect for soldiers who did not think. The farmer touched two trees. He measured the space between them with his eyes. He nodded to himself. Then he moved on. He walked for hours. From one path to another. From one slope to another. Always thinking. Always planning. Always silent. In his mind he saw the soldiers running. He saw fear. He saw panic. But his face showed nothing. Before dawn he returned home. The sack was empty now. The wires were no longer with him. The village was still asleep. The soldiers were still confident. The farmer sat on his chair and waited. Outside the forest stood quiet. Too quiet. By sunrise the forest would become a killing ground. Morning came slowly to the village. A pale sun rose over the hills. Fog still hung low near the forest, thick and cold. The German soldiers woke up laughing, stretching their arms, confident as always. To them this day was like any other day. Safe, easy, controlled. They did not know the forest had changed during the night. The farmer stood near his house, holding a simple farming tool. His face was calm. His eyes were low. But his ears listened to every sound. Boots hitting the ground. Metal clicking. Voices speaking in German. He watched the patrol. 6 soldiers walked toward the forest path. They moved without care. Their rifles hung loose. One of them smoked a cigarette. Another joked loudly. They believed no danger lived here. The farmer counted their steps. He knew their routine now. Every 30 minutes, a patrol entered the forest, walked the same path and returned. Always the same speed. Always the same road. Always the same mistake. The first soldier stepped into the fog. The wire was waiting. It was thin. Almost invisible. Stretched tight between 2 young trees. Set at neck height. The farmer had placed it carefully, pulling it until it sang softly in the night. The soldier walked fast. Too fast. The wire caught his throat. There was a sharp sound. A sudden stop. His body fell backward hard. Blood touched the ground. The forest swallowed the noise. The other soldiers froze. "What was that?" one shouted. They rushed forward. This was their second mistake. Another wire snapped tight. This one was lower. It caught a soldier across the chest. He fell face first, screaming. Panic spread like fire. The fog thickened. Shadows moved. The soldiers pointed their rifles in all directions. Their hands shook. They could not see clearly. Trees looked like enemies. Every sound felt close. One soldier fired into the fog. The shot echoed loudly. The farmer was not there. He was already moving. High above the path, he watched from behind thick bushes. His body was still. His breath was slow. His eyes followed every movement. He did not rush. He did not smile. He only waited. Another patrol heard the shots and ran into the forest. They ran straight into chaos. More wires waited. Some were low near the ground. Some were higher near the neck. Some were placed on slopes where falling meant broken bones. Each wire was placed with care. Each one had a purpose. Soldiers tripped. Soldiers fell. Soldiers screamed. They tried to cut the wires, but they could not see them in time. Every step was dangerous. Every breath was heavy with fear. One soldier shouted, "It's a trap." But it was too late. The farmer moved again. He crawled through mud and leaves. His clothes became wet. His hands bled from thorns. He did not stop. He reached another path and adjusted a wire. He pulled it tighter. He tested it once. Strong. Good. The Germans tried to organize. An officer shouted orders. Stay together. Move slow. But fear does not listen to orders. One soldier ran. The wire caught him at full speed. His body hit the ground with a dull sound. Silence followed. Then screaming again. The forest no longer felt natural. It felt alive. It felt angry. By now bodies lay hidden between trees. Blood mixed with wet soil. Fog covered everything. The smell of fear filled the air. The farmer watched from the shadows. This was not anger. This was not madness. This was planning. Every wire used was counted. Every path was chosen. He did not waste movement. He did not waste time. Down in the village, the remaining soldiers waited. They did not know what was happening. They only heard shots. Then screams. Then nothing. An officer clenched his fists. "Send more men," he ordered. More boots entered the forest. More fear followed. The farmer disappeared deeper into the trees, moving like a ghost. He knew the next patrol would choose the wider path. He had prepared that one too. Above the forest, the sun climbed higher. Inside the forest, fear grew darker. And this was only the beginning. The forest was no longer quiet. Shouts echoed between the trees. Boots hit the ground again and again. German voices filled the fog, loud and confused. Orders were shouted, but they came too fast and from too many mouths. The soldiers were scared now. They moved in groups, rifles raised, fingers tight on the triggers. Their eyes searched the fog, the ground, the trees, everywhere at once. Every step felt wrong. Every shadow felt dangerous. They could not see the wires. That was the worst part. One soldier lifted his foot carefully. Too carefully. The wire caught his ankle. He fell forward hard, his rifle firing into the air. The sound made everyone jump. Another soldier turned quickly to help him. A wire caught his neck. His scream stopped halfway. Blood sprayed across the leaves. His body dropped without a sound. Panic exploded. "Back. Go back," someone yelled. But going back was not safe either. The farmer watched from higher ground, hidden behind thick branches. His eyes were calm. His hands were steady. He counted the soldiers. He counted the paths. He counted the mistakes. He did not feel joy. He felt focus. The fog moved slowly, pushed by light wind. Sometimes it opened for a second, then closed again. In those short moments, the soldiers saw bodies on the ground. Friends they had laughed with only minutes ago. Fear turned into terror. One group tried to move together, shoulder to shoulder, hoping numbers would protect them. But the forest did not care about numbers. A wire stretched between two trees caught 3 soldiers at once. They fell over each other, shouting and firing. Bullets hit tree trunks. Wood exploded into sharp pieces. Another soldier was hit by friendly fire. He screamed in pain. The farmer used the noise. While the soldiers focused on the screams, he moved, low to the ground, slow and silent. He crossed a narrow path and reached a steep slope. There, he had placed his most dangerous traps. Wires near the edge. A single step forward meant a long fall. A soldier ran toward the slope, trying to escape the noise behind him. He did not see the wire. His leg caught. His body flew forward. He rolled down the hill, hitting rocks and trees. The sound stopped suddenly. Others saw him fall. They froze. Their courage broke. An officer tried to take control. He stood tall and shouted, "Hold your positions. This is one man. One man." But the forest answered him with silence. Then another scream. The officer's face changed. Sweat covered his skin. His eyes moved too fast. He was afraid even if he tried to hide it. The soldiers began shooting into the fog again. Bullets flew without aim. Trees were hit. Leaves fell like rain. The noise was loud, but it gave them no safety. The farmer waited. He knew this moment. When fear becomes confusion, men make mistakes. A group of soldiers ran toward a wide path. They believed open space meant safety. They did not know the farmer had planned for this too. Wires were placed lower here near the knees. The first soldier tripped. The second fell over him. The third crashed into both. The fourth tried to stop, but it was too late. They piled up, shouting, crying, bleeding. More soldiers rushed to help them. More fell. The forest floor became a trap. Some soldiers tried to crawl. Others tried to cut the wires with knives. But shaking hands made them slow. And the farmer had tied many wires in pairs. Cutting one was not enough. The farmer watched from the side. He changed position again. He moved toward the heart of the forest, where the fog was thickest. There, the paths crossed each other like a spider's web. He had used the land wisely. The Germans were lost now. They did not know which way led out. One soldier dropped his rifle and ran blindly. His breath was loud. His boots slipped in the mud. The wire caught him across the face. He fell hard. He did not get up. By now, bodies lay everywhere, on paths, near trees, at the bottom of slopes. Blood darkened the soil. The forest smelled of iron and fear. The farmer counted again. More than 20. And the sun was still rising. Deep inside the forest, a German officer sent a message back to the village. His voice shook as he spoke. "We are under attack," he said. "We cannot see the enemy." In the village, officers listened in silence. One of them whispered, "How many attackers?" There was a pause. Then the answer came, quiet and broken. "We think, only one." Fear passed through the German camp like cold wind. In the forest, the farmer adjusted another wire. This was far from over. Time moved slowly inside the forest. Outside, the sun climbed higher. Birds flew over the trees like nothing was wrong. But under the thick branches, fear ruled every step. The German soldiers were trapped inside a place they could not understand. 3 hours. That was how long the nightmare lasted. The soldiers tried to regroup. An officer gathered the remaining men near a broken tree. Their faces were pale. Their hands shook. Some were bleeding. Some had lost their helmets. All of them were scared. "We move together," the officer said. "Slow. Careful. Watch the ground." They obeyed. For a few steps. Then the forest spoke again. A wire snapped tight near the ground. One soldier fell forward, breaking his nose. He screamed in pain. Another wire caught the man behind him at chest level. He crashed into a tree and dropped his rifle. The group broke apart. Fear was stronger than orders. The farmer watched from a rocky ledge above them. Sweat ran down his face. His legs burned. His hands were cut and dirty. But his eyes were sharp. He remembered. He remembered the night his farm burned. He remembered his animals screaming. He remembered his wife's hand slipping from his. The soldiers below him were not strangers. They wore the same uniform. They spoke the same language as the men who had taken everything from him. But still he did not rush. He waited for the right moments. The fog grew thicker as the morning warmed. Wet air filled the forest. Sound traveled strangely now. A scream far away sounded close. A step nearby sounded far. The farmer used this. He moved across the slope and loosened a wire just a little. When a soldier touched it, the wire did not kill him. It made him fall. The fall made noise. Other soldiers ran to help. They hit the real trap. 2 wires placed close together. One at knee height. One at neck height. The first soldier tripped. The second ran forward and never stopped. Silence followed. The officer shouted again, his voice breaking. "Stop running. Stop." No one listened. Another patrol entered the forest from the village side. They came with anger, not fear. They believed strength would win. They walked faster. Louder. They died faster. The forest did not care how brave they felt. One soldier slipped on wet leaves and slid down a small hill. His body hit a tree hard. Another tried to jump over a wire and landed on another wire behind it. Pain was everywhere. The farmer moved constantly now. He never stayed in one place. He knew the Germans would try to find him. He changed direction, used higher ground, used fallen trees as cover. He was tired. His chest hurt. His legs felt heavy. Still he moved. He reached a narrow pass between rocks. Only one man could walk there at a time. He had placed his strongest wire there. An officer tried to lead his men through. "Follow me," he shouted. The wire caught him first. His body stopped suddenly. His helmet rolled away. His men stopped behind him, frozen. Without their leader, they fell apart. Some dropped their weapons. Some cried. Some prayed. The forest had broken them. The farmer watched as another body fell. He counted again. More than 40. 3 hours were almost gone. Back in the village, German command listened to reports in disbelief. One officer slammed his fist on a table. "This is impossible," he said. "One farmer cannot do this." But the forest did not lie. Inside the trees, the last group of soldiers tried to escape. They chose a path near a cliff, hoping it would lead out. The farmer was already there. He waited behind a tree, breathing slowly. One hand held the wire tight. The other rested on the ground. The first soldier stepped forward. The wire moved. The forest went silent again. The 3 hours were nearly over, and the number of the dead was still rising. The forest was tired. Branches were broken. Leaves were crushed under boots and bodies. The fog was thinner now, but the fear was thicker than ever. German soldiers moved slowly like wounded animals. Their confidence was gone. Only survival remained. The farmer felt the weight of time. His arms were heavy. His back ached. His fingers were numb from pulling wire again and again. Small cuts covered his hands. Blood mixed with dirt. But he did not stop. He could not stop. He knew this was the end. Only a few soldiers were left. They stayed close to each other now. No laughter. No shouting. Only whispers and short breaths. Their eyes were wide. Their faces empty. An officer still lived. He was taller than the others. His uniform was cleaner. His eyes were sharp, but fear lived inside them. He had lost many men today. He knew this battle was already lost. But he wanted to escape. "We move carefully," the officer said quietly. "Watch the ground. Watch the trees. Do not run." They nodded. Step by step they moved forward. The farmer watched them from behind a fallen tree. He recognized the officer. This man had given orders in the village. This man had laughed while farms burned. This man had looked away when people begged. The farmer's jaw tightened. But his hands stayed calm. He moved ahead of them using a hidden path. The forest opened into a narrow passage between rocks. On one side was a steep drop. On the other side, thick bushes and stone. There was only one way through. The farmer had saved his last wire for this place. It was stronger than the others. Pulled tight. Perfectly placed at neck height. Almost impossible to see in the soft morning light. He hid behind a rock and waited. The soldiers arrived. The officer stepped forward first. He lifted his rifle, scanning the path. His boots touched the ground carefully. His breath was slow. One step. Then another. The wire caught him. His body stopped suddenly. The sound was short and sharp. His helmet fell and rolled toward the edge. His men froze behind him, unable to move. For a moment no one spoke. Then panic returned. One soldier tried to turn back. A wire near the ground caught his foot. He fell sideways and hit his head on a rock. Another tried to jump over the fallen body. He slipped. The drop took him. Silence followed. Only 2 soldiers remained now. They dropped their rifles. They raised their hands. "Please," one whispered. The farmer did not move toward them. He stayed hidden. They looked around wildly, trying to see him. But the forest gave them nothing. One soldier ran. The wire ended him. The last soldier stood alone, shaking. Tears ran down his face. He fell to his knees. The farmer watched for a long moment. Then he turned away. The man's fear was punishment enough. When the farmer reached higher ground, he counted again. 50. Exactly 50. The number felt heavy in his chest. The forest was quiet again. No shots. No screams. No orders. Only wind moving through leaves. Down in the village, German soldiers waited. Hours had passed. Patrols had not returned. Smoke from engines rose into the air, but no one moved. A radio crackled. The report came in broken and shaking. 50 men, lost in the forest. The officer listening went silent. "That is not possible," he said softly. But it was. The farmer returned to his house before noon. He washed his hands in cold water. He changed his clothes. He sat on his chair like any other day. No one came for him. The Germans never entered that forest again. And the story of the farmer began to spread, quietly like a whisper carried by the wind. The forest changed after that day. German soldiers no longer walked near it. Trucks stopped far from the trees. Patrols turned back before reaching the first path. Even strong officers felt uneasy when they looked at the dark line of branches. They gave the forest a name. They called it the Cursed Forest. No one laughed anymore. Stories spread fast in wartime. Soldiers talked in low voices at night. They spoke about invisible wires. About men dying without seeing their enemy. About a ghost that moved through the trees. Some said it was not a man at all. Some said the forest itself was alive. German command sent investigators. They looked at maps. They asked questions. They walked only at the edge of the forest, never inside. When they found bodies days later, they felt sick. There were no bullets. No explosions. Only thin wires and broken men. "This was planned," one officer said quietly. "Very carefully." But no one could explain how one man did it. Meanwhile, the village breathed again. People walked a little taller. They spoke a little louder. They shared food again. Hope, small but real, returned. They did not speak the farmer's name. They did not look at him differently. That was how he wanted it. The farmer continued his life as before. He woke early. He worked in the fields. He fixed fences. He spoke little. His hands were still rough. His clothes still old. But something had changed. People no longer saw a weak man. They saw strength in his silence. Resistance fighters began to visit the area at night. They moved carefully, watching the forest with respect. When they heard the story, their eyes widened. "One farmer?" one whispered. "Alone?" The villagers only nodded. Soon the story reached far places. Across hills. Across borders. It became a quiet symbol of hope. If one man could fight back, others could too. The Germans felt it. Their control weakened. Fear replaced confidence. Officers avoided giving orders near forests. Patrols doubled in open areas but stayed away from trees. The farmer never joined the fighters. He never traveled. He never spoke of what he did. But the forest remembered. Months passed. The war moved on. New battles started. New deaths followed. But the cursed forest stayed untouched. Even when German forces retreated, they avoided it. One day, an old German soldier whispered before leaving the village, "Do not follow us into that forest." The farmer watched from a distance. He felt no pride. He felt no victory. Only peace. Because his land was safe. Years later, after the war ended, people asked questions. Historians came. They searched records. They counted the dead. They studied the forest. They found wires. Rusted. Broken. They found paths that made no sense on maps. Slopes that hid traps. Trees placed perfectly. This was not luck, one man said. This was knowledge. The farmer was never named in books. There was no statue. No medal. He did not need one. He lived his life quietly until the end. When he died, the village buried him near the forest. Birds sang above his grave. Trees stood tall around him. The forest was silent again. But its legend never died. Because sometimes war is not won by armies. Sometimes it is won by a man who knows his land and refuses to kneel. The war did not end in one day. But slowly the guns became quiet. Trucks stopped coming. Uniforms disappeared from the roads. Flags were pulled down. Europe began to breathe again. The village survived. Fields were green once more. Children played near broken houses. Smoke no longer meant danger. It meant cooking. It meant life. The farmer lived through it all. He never spoke about the forest. He never told anyone what he had done. When people thanked him with their eyes, he only nodded and returned to his work. To him it was not hero work. It was survival. Sometimes at sunrise he stood near the edge of the forest. He looked at the trees. He listened to the wind. The forest looked peaceful now, like nothing had ever happened. But he remembered. He remembered the screams. He remembered the fear. He remembered the wires cutting through silence. He also remembered why he did it. He had no gun, no army, no uniform. He had land. He had patience. He had courage. Years passed. People moved on. New houses were built. Old wounds slowly healed. The world talked about generals, tanks, and great battles. No one spoke about a quiet farmer in a small village. And that was fine. One evening, an old resistance fighter visited him. They sat outside as the sun went down. "You saved many lives," the man said. The farmer looked at the ground. "I protected my home," he replied simply. That was all. When the farmer grew old, his hands shook. His steps slowed. But his eyes stayed strong. He spent more time sitting near the forest, watching birds and listening to leaves. When he died, the village came together. Not with flags. Not with speeches. Only silence and respect. They buried him near the trees. No marker told his story. But the forest knew. Years later, a child asked his grandfather, "Why do soldiers never walk in that forest?" The old man smiled sadly. "Because once," he said, "a man stood there who refused to be afraid." The lesson was simple. Power is not always loud. Strength is not always seen. Weapons do not always win wars. Sometimes, a quiet man with simple tools can change history. And that is why the story lived on. Not as a tale of killing, but as a reminder. They came with weapons. He fought with the land itself. And he won.